Hello, everybody. I must say, first of all, tremendous presentation from Daniel. Very hard shoes now to wear. Thank you for that. I'm a little bit excited, but thank you for the warm welcome. I'll be talking today about how to gather, how to scale, and how to especially act on user feedbacks, specifically in the context of large language model-based applications. Now, it is 4 p.m., so I can sense the lunch is starting to kick in. I don't want you to get sleepy on me. So first, I will try to convince you that this is a discussion worth having. And I want you to focus on a big number. Over the last 12 months, we've seen an increase of over 245%, that's the estimate, in the development of AI-based features in our products. I mean, it should not come as a surprise. We know all the hype, the overexcitement that there is in the industry. And to me, this number basically means that everyone on the planet is either shipping AI-based features or at the very least, they're planning them in their product roadmaps. Don't get me wrong. I'm not complaining. I love this. I think this is one of the best times to be alive, not as human beings. The world is a mess, but that's for therapy. As developers, this is a hell of a time to be building stuff. Never have we had this immense power to build incredible use cases and ship them to our users. And if we're honest with ourselves, it's not even that hard. We don't need to be AI researchers to do this. We have SDKs, we have libraries, we have utilities, we have abstractions, we are building frameworks because why not? We love them apparently. So the cost of doing this is actually going down as well. But I do see a risk. And the risk is that we get so overhyped, so overexcited with this immense power that we get blind and forget about the king in the room, the user needs. The data tells us that this might be happening. So despite this huge spike, studies report an 80% failure, especially in the enterprise sector, in adopting those features in production. So you see the problem. On one hand, we are overly excited and trying to ship as many features as we can with AI, but on the other hand, the end users are failing to getting value from those same features. And to me, at least to me, this reminds me of a warning that we got many years ago, not now, not recently, from this guy, Steve Jobs. I don't want to get into any Apple fan fight, but the warning that we got, I think is precisely on point, even today. And the point from Steve Jobs was that when working with new technologies, we have to start with the customer experience. And we need to work backwards to the technology. The other way around simply does not work. I think we were saying this yesterday for developer experience, but it's even truer for customer one. So, you might argue, okay, I'm sold. It's really important to care about the users, but why is that my job? I mean, as a developer, I should not care about that, right? There are product managers, there are user researchers, there are designers. That's their job. Well, yes and no. Yes, it is their job. Yes, they're there for a reason. But there are particular complexities when working with the user experience of a product that heavily relies on large language models that they cannot solve themselves. They don't have the domain knowledge to work on this. We need, as developers, we need to be in the room. We need to work with them. Consider this. What we are used to ship, what we are used to work with is compelling, strong, reliable user experiences that we ship to users and then we wait for their unpredictable inputs that try their best to break them in some way. This is what we've been doing all these years, and this is what we can manage, what we know how to handle. But with LLM-based applications, especially the ones that heavily rely on them, That is not the case. We're working with unpredictable outputs. So this is an example of a product I love. I guess most of you already know it, but for those who don't, this is Perplexity. It's an LLM-based search engine that I use almost every day. So you put in a query, and instead of getting links, you get an answer. You get an answer, and you also get related queries, related questions that help you follow up on your research. Now, I think that there has been a lot of effort put into this product to design the user journey, the UX, the framing of these features. But at the end of the day, the LLMs decide what is the summary, what is the answer, how lengthy it is, how precise it is, how concise it is, what are the related topics, how many of them there are. So who's in charge of the UX? You see, the thing is that for products like these, you cannot have a development team that works on the features that are AI-based and a design team that works on the experience. You need to have a collaboration between these two parts because the LLM performances has a direct impact over the user experience. The user experience itself reveals when the user uses our product, which is quite scary. But we are developers. So we are facing new challenges. I hope I convinced you that these are indeed new challenges and it is very important that we take care of them. We are developers. What do? We build tools. So today I want to show you and share my personal experience of how we use this product, which is called LangFuse. It's an open source piece of technology, a very tight community launched on Product Hunt. And it's mainly on an observability tool specifically meant for large language models. I think you're familiar with the concept of an observability tool. It gives you the full picture of what's happening in your system. So anything that an LLM generates with the SDK, you can instrument your application to monitor and observe. So it's mainly an observability tool, but it comes packed with a set of features that we leveraged to stay on top of the user feedbacks every step of our journey. Which journey? I'll make examples from a product we launched not so much ago. This is Turing. It's a product we launched on Product Hunt as of, I think, November of last year, so something around that. And let's say the mission was simple yet ambitious. The idea is to create the ultimate app for travelers. Traveler just like me, I'm in Chisinau for the weekend. I have a few hours tomorrow. I want to soak in the local experience and get to know the place, really have a local experience. The way we do this in Turing is we show people a map of what are the places of interest around them, not just the main touristy attractions, but also, and especially the hidden gems, the ones the tourists don't know about. And for each of these places, then we show stories, we show curiosities, little trivia, local tips. Now, the main selling point of Turing is that this content is not taken from a DB. There's no curated content that we ship to people. Everything gets generated on the fly, on demand, for the user that consumes the content. We have this very long pipeline that needs to run on the fly in about 15 to 20 seconds when the user is on site to generate content for those people. And it starts by doing research on the topics, decided what places of interest are worth showing, and goes on and on until it can craft the final content for the users to consume. Again, business perspective, this is heaven on earth. I have a product that is very low in operations because I have to do nothing. There's no human in the loop. It's 100% autonomous pipeline. So I can scale it in terms of operation, at least, limitlessly. And I can also have 100% coverage over the entire globe from day one. Amazing. I can ship content in almost every language. I mean, why not? I can ship in Russian, Chinese, English, Indian. Why not? I'm not writing the content. But from a user experience perspective, at the end of the day, again, we spent so much time designing the app, designing the user journey, designing the onboarding, the monetization, the paywall. But the core feature of the product, which is what places I see, what I know, what I learn about those places, and how good the stories are, I have nothing to do about that. I design the system, but the actual quality gets revealed when the user is on site. So let's go on a journey and step by step see how we employed LangFuse as a tool to stay on top of user feedbacks and really listen to them every step of the way. So we started, as everyone, from zero. So we had just a few friends, family and friends, colleagues, helping us to try out the product. And at that stage, you have a big privilege. You have the privilege of doing totally unscalable stuff. You don't care about scalability. You have 10 users. You don't care about scalability. And in LangFuse, I mean, I told you, LangFuse is an observability tool. So what it gives you is the picture of the full trace of what's happening thanks to your LLMs. This is, for example, is a pipeline of content generation, and it starts by doing a lot of research, and then it brainstorms about possible ideas of topics to discuss. And what you can do in LangFuse is look at each of the individual traces and see precisely for which inputs, what outputs the LLMs were giving the users. And at that stage, with that few users, we would come in every single day and check every single output of any single step in our pipeline. Very time-consuming, but very effective, especially because in LangFuse, you can also act on those generations. So there's a feature, the playground, which allows you to start from a generation and play by varying the prompt, varying the hyperparameters, varying the models, and see how they impact the final output. So we would be in touch with those people that were trying the product. They would text us, I don't like this, I don't like that, and every single day we were there experimenting. Now, this is fun, but very time-consuming. You can do that when you have very few users. You cannot do that for every single one if you have more than 10 or 20, especially for a very small team. We were just a team of 2 people working on this product. And even when you get to, I'd say, 100 people, you need to take decisions on which outputs you observe. So we needed a way to structure the user feedbacks. Now, the solution is very, straightforward. We implemented a widget in our app to ask users, how do you like the content? And by a simple emoji, they could tell us, really love this, love the content, or this is terrible, not going to use the product any longer. And this is nothing new. So there's no shortage of user feedback products out there. But we are working with large language models, so the outputs are non-deterministic. We need a way, we cannot be satisfied with saying our content usually gets on average 3.5 as a score. No, we need to have a way to correlate a specific score, a specific feedback to the actual individual generation in our pipelines that got that low score. And we could do this with LangFuse. So by the SDK, you can correlate an individual feedback to the generation. And instead of going in every day, checking for every of the output, we would go in and look for the lowest performing stories and see what was wrong about them. For example, by doing this, we noticed at the beginning of our journey that we had a problem in the source filtering. So all of the research is done autonomously, but we were trusting the search engine to give us relevant results. Well, that is true, I don't know, maybe 90% of times, but in case of homonyms, in case of ambiguous queries, you might have irrelevant results from a search engine. So we had to include a step in the pipeline to filter out any irrelevant result, again, driven by another LLM. Also, we could monitor how these scores would go over time. So we always knew if we were changing the configuration of the LLM application, whether we were steering in the right direction or not. So this gave us the ability to move from 0 to 10, 10 to 100. Now, from 100 to 1,000, we had more issues. For example, this for us was the launch on Product Hunt. This is how we got to 1,000 users, and we got very lucky. We got second product of the day on Product Hunt, which meant a lot of users onboarding in our app very rapidly, but they were far less engaged than our initial user base. So they didn't have the commitment to tell us when something was not working in the product. They would just drop out. I mean, it shouldn't be, we shouldn't expect more from them. And what Langfuse helped us in doing was scaling the observability of the system so that we could create evaluation configuration. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with the evaluation concept, but basically it means asking another large language model to judge and evaluate the output of any large language model pipeline. Sounds wonderful. There's a catch. You need to ask very precise questions. You cannot ask, what is the quality of this story? That doesn't work. You need to have users for that. But by the work that we had done by that stage, we knew precisely what users liked about our content, what they hated about our content, and what were frequent problems that we had. Evaluation configs in Langfuse let you instruct an LLM to look for precise characteristic in an output and tell you whether it meets the expectation or not. I'll give you an example so this becomes a bit clearer. One of the issues that we had was about language. You see, the research that we run online to know more about topics is done in the local language. So I'm Italian, but if I'm in China, the search online is run in Chinese. Because running in the local language means we get local knowledge, local tips, and we stay away of the touristy stuff. But sometimes the LLM would think, well, I have all this knowledge in Chinese, so the content should be in Chinese, right? I should match the content of the knowledge, which is definitely not the case. I don't speak Chinese. I don't want content in Chinese. And this is something that we had noticed a long time before, but we thought we had fixed until we ran the evaluation. So it turned up that for maybe 10 or 15%, we still had this issue in production, and some of the users were getting content in the wrong language. And Langfuse, by the evaluation, helped us spot that 10 and 15%. Another way we leveraged Langfuse to get from 100 to 1,000 and scale our monitoring was about experimentation with prompts. So far I've told you that the LLMs are the ones driving the UX, and I do believe that, but of course they're not driving it consciously, not yet, at least. So they drive it by the instructions we give them. And most of the instruction is represented in the prompt. Now, if you have worked with LLMs, you know the drill. The first prompt you write is never the optimal one. You have to experiment, you have to variate, you have to try different variations and see what works best for your requirement. Again, in Langfuse, we could define prompts outside of the application code base, which makes sense because they're not a technical implementation detail. They're part of the functional design, of the functional behavior of the app. So they were externalized and put into this product, and it helped us in many ways. So for example, we shifted from changing our prompts a few times per month to even a few times per day in some periods. And by using labels, you could also run A/B testing. So you could ship one version of the prompt to a subset of users and the legacy version to another one, and see by the score, by the user feedbacks, and by the evaluation sometime, which one performed best. We're almost at the end of the journey. So we got to 1,000. Now what's next? We need to scale and fine-tune. So by that time, our system was pretty stable. We knew what prompts worked and which didn't. We knew what the main problems were, and we had solved them. It was a matter of fine-tuning. And yes, prompts are important, but they're not the only way you can instruct an LLM and you can define its behavior. There are also these sort of hyperparameters like the temperature, the presence penalty, the max tokens. There are a lot of hyperparameters that have an effect on the behavior of the LLM. But probably one of the most impacting ones, beside the prompt, is the model. The same prompt can behave very, very differently on a different model, from even at the same, let's say, quality level, from Claude 3.5 to GPT-4o, for example. And in the prompt storage in LangFuse, we can not only define the instruction part of the prompt, we can also define metadata configuration for it. So we can attach and link to the version of the prompt configuration parameters for it. For example, the seed, the max tokens, and again, the model. Now, LangFuse is just an observability tool with an SDK, so it doesn't give you the ability to generate content and outputs with any given model. This is a custom implementation you have to do your side, but the implementation is very trivial. We just had a proxy large language model in our application code base with a very simple proxy pattern that took the input from LangFuse, the metadata configuration parameter, and based on the model value, it would redirect the request to a different model that we supported. In summer, at the beginning of the summer, we had a big spike in usage. Of course, people started to travel. So we had this big spike in usage. And what we noticed is that we had very, very poor performances on some places which required a longer execution of the pipeline. We were using GPT-4o Mini, which we thought was enough for performances. Again, this needs to happen really fast. The whole pipeline takes 15 seconds, and it's a lot of steps. But GPT-4o Mini was not enough. Using the proxy LLM and using LangFuse, we switched over a few minutes from GPT-4o Mini to Mistral 8 billion parameters on Grok, which, I don't know if you haven't tried it, it's lightning fast. And that helped us fix the performance problem. So that's the end of the journey. And I hope I convinced you that taking care of users is especially important, especially harder, in the context of LLM-based application, but there are tools that can help us. Just one more slide about me. I'm Simone. I'm from Italy. I'm the head of product at Extreme, where we help other businesses, mostly corporates and scale-ups, build incredible digital products and AI solutions. Here you have my QR code. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, I would love to chat and see what you're building with AI in your products. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the passion, Simone. It was a pleasure. I remember your presentation was so well. I hope that the people enjoyed it. And I hope we get some questions, because apparently you explained it so well, people barely have questions. But we do have one. So what's the main difference between the LangFuse platform and open source self-hosted version?
I will interpret the question, and I think you mean by self-hosting LangFuse itself, which you can do because it's an open source project. In our experience, we didn't need that, but it makes sense from a cost perspective if you have a big usage in mind. So at the beginning of Turing, we didn't have that many users, so it made sense to stay with the hosted version. We did have a spikes in cost, but we managed that by simply removing some of the generation from the tracing and thus reducing the LangFuse usage. So all of the setup, even without self-hosting, was free for our use case.
And one more question. Do you have experience with testing agentic systems or chain of thoughts?
Yeah. Yes, and what I showed you before, we have covered it very, very quickly, but the whole system behind the pipeline that curates content from Turing is an example of a multi-agent system. So there's at least 7 agents collaborating with each other, each having a different task in the pipeline. And even just from an observability tool, but especially from a user perspective one, when you have more than one agent collaborating, you definitely need a tool to stay on top of that complexity.
Thank you.